and welcome. In the news, Rohingya genocide worsens amid Rakhine conflict, says Brooke. Seoul says North Korea's failed launch was possible hypersonic weapon. Putin-Kim deal challenges global order. Russia starts closed-door espionage trial of U.S. reporter, and Modi to visit Moscow soon, says Russia. As fighting between the Southeast Asian countries' military and a powerful ethnic group intensified in the western Rakhine state, a United Kingdom-based rights group has called for world action over what it called an intensifying genocide against Myanmar's mostly Muslim Rohingya minority. Tuesday's warning from the Burmese Rohingya organization UK Brooke came as the United Nations World Food Programme's WFP condemned the looting and burning of its food stores and warehouse in Mondor, a coastal town on Myanmar's border with Bangladesh that is majorly home to the Rohingya and is the focus of current hostilities between the military and the Arakan Army AA. The AA represents Rakhine's Buddhist majority and is fighting for autonomy for the region. According to the United Nations Human Rights Chief, it issued evacuation orders for Mondor late on June 17th ahead of a planned offensive, leaving tens of thousands of Rohingya residents of the town with nowhere to flee. The Rohingya are considered outsiders by the military, as well as many of Rakhine's Buddhist residents have long suffered persecution in Myanmar, including a brutal military offensive that drove some 750,000 members of the community in Bangladesh in 2017. The crackdown is now the subject of a genocide case at the International Court of Justice, ICJ. The 600,000 Rohingya who remain in Rakhine are facing increased persecution after fighting between the military and the AA resumed last October, Brooke in its new report said. The military, which seized power in February 2021 coup, is subjecting Rohingya in areas under their control to a slow death by depriving them of resources indispensable for survival, including food, water, shelter, sanitation, and medical care, and also forcibly recruiting members of the community, including children, and sending them to the front lines to fight against the AA, it said. Both the military and the AA have committed war crimes against the Rohingya, Brooke said, including murder, torture and cruel treatment, extrajudicial executions, sexual violence, rape, taking hostages, conscripting and using children, pillaging and deliberately attacking civilians. Ton Kin, president of Brooke, said Rohingya remaining in Rakhine state face either a fast death being killed by the Myanmar military or Arakan army, or a slow death as a result of being systematically deprived of the necessities of life. We are witnessing another significant increase in violence against the Rohingya, and once again the United Nations Security Council looks on and does nothing. The international community's failure to protect the Rohingya has resulted in hundreds, or if not several thousands of deaths in the past 6 months alone, Brooke said. South Korea has said North Korea might have launched a hypersonic missile as intelligence agencies probed a ballistic missile test that failed early on Wednesday. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff JCS said the test took place at about 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday and originated from the area around Pyongyang. Japan also detected the launch, with the Ministry of Defense saying the weapon reached an altitude of around 100 kilometers 62 miles and flew east for over 200 kilometers 124 miles. A JCS official later said on condition of anonymity that the military was considering the possibility that the weapon was a hypersonic missile, noting that it exploded in mid-air over waters off North Korea's east coast. According to reports, there appeared to be more smoke than during earlier launches, raising the possibility of combustion issues. It also appeared to be a solid fuel missile, the official added. The newest missile test came days after North Korea signed a comprehensive strategic cooperation treaty with Russia, and as the U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt arrived in Busan to take part in joint military drills with South Korea and Japan. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un announced in 2021 that he wanted to modernize his country's military and launched plans to develop a series of technologically advanced weapon systems, including a hypersonic missile. Such missiles are seen as harder to detect because they can travel at speeds over 5 times the speed of sound and are designed to be maneuverable, posing a challenge to regional missile defense systems. Pyongyang said in March that it has successfully tested a solid fuel engine for a new type intermediate range hypersonic missile IRBM, and the following month reported that Kim had overseen the test of that RIBM, which it named the Hwasong 16B. Tensions in the region have increased as Kim has accelerated North Korean testing of missiles and other weapons. The United States and South Korea have responded by expanding their combined training and trilateral drills involving Japan and sharpening their deterrence strategies. Now, shortly after signing a fresh comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un showed off their closer relations by going for a spin in a Russian-made Urus limousine. Robert Darvoud, professor of intelligence and national security at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom, said, according to a report, that photographs from the visit appear to show a genuine empathy between Kim and Putin. The two countries' latest pact, which includes a mutual defense agreement, is a sign of just how far the relationship has come since Putin embarked on his full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Where once Moscow, a veto-holding member of the United Nations Security Council, worked with the international community to rein in Pyongyang's missile and nuclear weapons programs, it now appears to be giving its explicit support to the war's most isolated regime. The agreement should not come as a surprise, wrote Eugene Ruma, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment and the director of its Russia and Eurasia program, in a commentary after North Korea released additional details of the agreement. The newest deal replaces the Friendship, Cooperation and Good Neighborliness Treaty that the two countries signed in 2000, just after Putin became president for the first time and North Korea was under the rule of Kim Jong-il, the father of Kim Jong-un. But its contents more closely echo the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation and Mutual Assistance that was signed in 1961 when Russia was the dominant power in the now-defunct Soviet Union. As well as the Mutual Defense Deal, which has attracted the most attention, it also includes provisions for cooperation in healthcare, medical education and science, as well as plans for a road bridge across the Tumen River. The deal was a breakthrough document, Putin said, and reflected the two countries' desire to lift their relations to a new qualitative level. Now on judicial matters, the trial of Evan Gershkovich, the first American journalist to be arrested on espionage charges in Russia since the Cold War, started Wednesday morning in a closed-door hearing that has been criticized by his newspaper in the United States. Gershkovich, 32, was arrested while reporting for the Wall Street Journal, which he joined in January 2022, just weeks before Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. While several newsrooms subsequently pulled their reporters out of Russia, Gershkovich remained covering the war and how it was changing life in Russia. In the city of Yekaterinburg, the trial is taking place, where he was detained over a year ago and accused of spying for the CIA. Footage on Wednesday morning showed Gershkovich inside a glass. Gershkovich, the U.S. government and the Wall Street Journal have strongly denied the charges against him. Within 2 weeks of his arrest in March 2023, the U.S. State Department designated him as wrongfully detained and called for his immediate release. The trial of Gershkovich and the American-born son of the Soviet era emerged to the U.S. has emphasized the degree to which Russia's invasion of Ukraine has harmed relations between Moscow and Washington. His hearing began at 11 a.m. local time behind closed doors in Sverdlovsk Regional Court in Yekaterinburg. In their indictment, Russian prosecutors said that under instructions from the CIA and using painstaking conspiratory methods, Gershkovich was collecting secret material and information about a Russian tank factory. No reporters, friends, family members or U.S. embassy staff will be permitted into the courtroom during his trial, which is anticipated to last months. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said ahead of the trial that the U.S. certainly does not expect Gershkovich to have a free and fair trial, given that these are charges that never should have been brought in the first place. Miller said embassy personnel were traveling to Yekaterinburg, over 800 miles from Moscow, and will attempt to attend the trial. Since his arrest, Gershkovich has been held in Moscow's notorious Levortovo prison, spending almost every hour of the day in a small cell, as his pretrial detention period was extended as many times. Meanwhile, Narendra Modi, Indian Prime Minister, will visit Russia for the first time since the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine, in a journey that emphasizes the rise in relations between the two countries, despite New Delhi's close relationship with the Washington. Kremlin spokesperson Yuri Ushakov said, according to reports, preparations are being made for Modi's visit to Moscow and dates will be announced soon. The upcoming visit will be Modi's first to the country since 2019 and come less than a month after he was narrowly re-elected as Prime Minister during a weeks-long vote. Modi last met Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Uzbekistan in 2022, where he told the leader that today's era is not of war. Putin also visited New Delhi just months before his unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. India's relations with Russia date back decades to the Cold War and have remained strong despite repeated sanctions on Moscow from Western governments. New Delhi has continually abstained from votes condemning Russia at the United Nations and has avoided public criticism of Moscow's war in Ukraine. India remains heavily dependent on the Kremlin for its military equipment, a major connection given India's ongoing tensions at its shared Himalayan border with China, and has increased purchases of discounted Russian crude oil, giving Putin's nation a major financial lifeline as it faces global isolation. At the same time, India's relations with the United States have grown sturdier amid shared fears over China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. Modi met with U.S. President Joe Biden during a state visit to Washington last June, in a visit for the bolstering their defense, trade and technology partnership. The Indian leader also addressed Congress during that trip, an honor typically reserved for close U.S. allies and partners, and attended a lavish state dinner. On more stories, and again on judicial matters, Assange strikes deal with the U.S., pleads guilty for freedom. On Wednesday morning, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks founder, walked free for the first time in 12 years after a U.S. judge signed off on his unanticipated plea deal. Assange walked out of the courtroom as a free man, departing by car for the airport, where he caught a flight to the Australian capital, Canberra. His U.S. lawyer, Barry Pollack, while speaking outside the court, said he had suffered tremendously in his fight for free speech and freedom of press. On Monday afternoon, in a stunning turn of events, the 52-year-old Australian was released from a high-security prison in London and had already boarded a private jet to leave the United Kingdom before the world even knew of his agreement with the U.S. government. He appeared in a U.S. courtroom on the Northern Mariana Islands to formalize the agreement, officially pleading guilty to conspiring unlawfully to obtain and disseminate classified information over his alleged role in one of the biggest breaches of classified material in United States military history. The remote Pacific island chain is a U.S. territory located about 6,000 kilometers, that's 3,700 miles, west of Hawaii. Assange, who has long held a deep mistrust of the U.S., even going so far as accusing it of allegedly plotting his assassination, was hesitant about stepping foot in the continental U.S., and so prosecutors asked for all proceedings to take place in a day in a U.S. federal court based in Saipan, the largest island and capital of the Northern Mariana Islands. Justice Department prosecutors also said the court on the island made logistical sense as it's closer to Australia, where Assange will ultimately travel to following the completion of his legal fights. Kevin Rudd, Australia's ambassador to Washington and former Prime Minister who assists facilitate negotiations with the United States, watch proceedings in the courtroom. Talking election matters, Macron's election gamble risks French democracy. Two neighboring countries are approaching elections that were called out of the blue Both have governments that are likely to fall. In both countries, political tensions have divided families and friends. At this point, all efforts to draw parallels between the British and French elections must stop. Because however much might be at issue in the UK election, and there is much, it pales next to the stakes that have been raised across the channel. Here in France, it is not just the fate of a government or a leader that is in the air, but of a political system. And the risks are not of disappointed hopes and crushed careers as in peacefully functioning democracy, but of actual violence. President Macron surprised the country 2 weeks ago when he called the snap vote in response to his crushing by the far right at the elections to the European Parliament. He appears to have thought that a lightning campaign will frighten voters out of their flirtation with the extremes and return a centrist majority to the National Assembly. A week ahead of the first round, nothing suggests that this calculation was right. The far-right National Rally RN is still way ahead in the polls, and now there is a left-wing alliance whose main component is the far-left France Unbowed LFI that is poised to come second. The possible outcomes are either an outright RN majority and so a far-right government, or a hung parliament that spells paralysis. Either way, the risks are threefold. First, a crisis of France's sovereign debt as the markets defy the French government much as they did the UK's elsewhere Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Second, violence is on the street. And third, institutional collapse. Now in African shores, Kenyan's President Labour's protest treasonous. On Tuesday, Kenyan President William Ruto condemned protests that saw Parliament stormed and no less than 5 people shot dead as treasonous, but did not address the growing outrage against a controversial finance bill that triggered the widespread demonstrations. Kenya is at the grip of nationwide protests against proposed tax hikes, culminating in Tuesday's total shutdown of the country, which immediately turned violent as police used tear gas and live rounds on protesters. The controversial finance bill has unleashed widespread protest movement promising for 7 days of rage. The government last week scrapped some tax surges, including a proposed 16% value-added tax on bread, along with taxes on motor vehicles, vegetable oil and mobile money transfers. But the concessions have not been enough to quell protests amidst the rising cost of living. 2 bodies were seen lying motionless on the ground in Nairobi as the country's parliament was breached. Kenyan police were also seen beating and later arresting some paramedics who were helping wounded protesters. Reuters said during a nationwide address after Parliament was set alight that the events on Tuesday were a grave threat to national security and that the conversation around the bill had been hijacked by dangerous people. The military has been deployed to support the country's police services as human rights and civil society groups criticized the heavy-handed response by the police on Tuesday, Kenya's defense ministry said. It was reported that at least 5 people were shot dead and around 31 were wounded during Tuesday's protests. According to a joint statement by Amnesty International Kenya, the Kenya Medical Association, the Law Society of Kenya, and Police Reforms Working Group of Kenya, of these 13 were hit with live bullets, 4 with rubber bullets, and 3 with launcher canisters. Now I'll take a quick break, and when I come back, I'll bring you more stories. Don't go anywhere. It's Zuma Nigeria now, and you're welcome back. And let's begin with Tinubu to consult governors OPS on minimum wage. Yesterday, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said he will consult with the 36 state governors and members of the organized private sector OPS before arriving at the figure that will be submitted to the National Assembly in the form of an executive bill as the new national minimum wage. Mohammed Idris, Minister of Information and National Orientation, revealed this according to a report at the end of the Federal Executive Council FEC meeting presided over by President Tinubu at the Council Chamber Presidential Villa in Abuja. The minister said a memo on the report of the new minimum wage was presented to the council but noted that it was stepped down, being a national matter that had to do with the governors and the organized private sector, adding that it was after extensive consultations with the major stakeholders that the president, with informed knowledge, will then forward a figure that will be the national minimum wage. Remember that at the end of the tripartite committee meeting on the new national minimum wage, the government team and organized private sector offered 62,000 naira from the present 30,000 naira. But Labour, comprising the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, demanded 215,000 naira living wage. The decision of the president to consult the major stakeholders is coming on the heels of a statement by the president of the NLC, Joe Ajaero, that Labour had expected the president to reach out to members of the tripartite committee to harmonize the figure. Comrade Ajaero had hinged his position on the fact that there was a stalemate at the end of the tripartite committee meetings. But while speaking, the minister said, and I quote, "I want to inform Nigerians here that the Federal Executive Council FEC deliberated on the report of the tripartite committee on new national minimum wage, and the decision is that the new national minimum wage is not just that of the federal government. It is an issue that involves the federal, state, local government and organized private sector, and of course, organized labor." And finally on the news, Akpabio denies new aircraft claims for Tinubu and Shettima. Godswill Akpabio, president of the Senate, has discharged claims that the Senate proposed new aircraft for President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima. In a statement on Tuesday by Jackson Udom, his special assistant on print media, Akpabio clarified during a condolence visit to Senator Tahir Mungono over the death of his father. The president of the Senate said the report attributing the comment to him on the purchase of new aircraft was not true. According to the Senate president, the report is from propagandists and fifth columnists. He said the Senate was fixated on delivering legislation that will support actualization of President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. Fabio, who expressed satisfaction with the current security situation in Borno State, urged Nigerians to continue to pray for the present administration. A recap of major stories says Rohingya genocide worsens amid Rakhine conflict, says Brooke. Seoul says North Korea's failed launch was possible. Hypersonic weapon. Putin Kim deal challenges global order. Russia starts closed-door espionage trial of U.S. reporter, and Modi to visit Moscow soon, says Russia. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.